can all recall this happening at least once. Maybe you're talking with a friend or family member about the new Spider-Man movie. They say the movie looks fire, and now you're getting ads on your phone for a free slushie when you go to the movies. It feels too accurate to be a coincidence. Is your phone listening to you? We verify.
Your phone knows a lot about you. It knows what you search, what you watch, and sometimes it feels like it knows what you're talking about, too. So is your phone listening to your conversations? Let's verify. Our sources are allaboutcookies.org and norton.com. Here's what we found. According to cybersecurity experts, there is no proven evidence that your phone is constantly listening to every conversation just to show you targeted ads. So why do those ads sometimes feel like they know exactly what you're thinking? It's because companies collect data about your online activity to help show you ads that match your interests. That can include things like what you search, the websites you visit, the apps you use, your location, and more. But that doesn't mean your phone can't listen. The apps on your phone may have access to more information than you realize. Many apps request microphone and camera permissions when you install them, often for legitimate features like video or voice message. The issue is, some apps may request permissions they don't necessarily need. That's why experts say you should pay close attention to which apps have access to your microphone, camera, location, and other personal information. They also recommend being especially cautious with unverified third-party apps, since those apps may not have the same privacy and security protections as the ones in the default app store. So how can you protect your privacy? Start by checking your app permissions. On an iPhone, go to Settings, scroll down, then tap Privacy and Security. From there, scroll down, tap Microphone, and review which apps you want to have access. You can also do the same for camera, location, and other features. Now, on Android, go to Settings, then Security and Privacy, and use Permission Manager to see which apps can access your information. Experts say the general rule of thumb is, if an app doesn't need access to your microphone, then turn it off. They also say delete apps you no longer use, limit location tracking, and be more aware when approving permission requests. So we can verify that yes, your phone may be listening to you, just not in the way you think. While it's not proven to be constantly listening to your conversations, there's a chance that your apps are.
If you have something you want us to verify, text us at 256-382-2692. With many students heading back to class this week, you may already be seeing school zone lights flashing in the area. But what happens if you see those lights on outside of normal school hours, like after school, on a weekend, or even when classes aren't even in session? Do you still have to slow down? We verify.
School zones are designed to help keep students safe during arrival and dismissal, but those flashing lights can sometimes be active outside of those normal times. This often leaves some drivers wondering if the lower speed limit is actually in effect. So do school zone speed limits apply if they're flashing outside normal school hours? We verify. Our sources are the Huntsville Police Department, worldmetrics.org, ALDOT, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Here's what we found. HPD says school zone lights are typically activated through schedules set by traffic engineering or set manually by safety patrol aides. While they're generally not active when school is out of session, there may be times when they are flashing outside of regular school hours. So what should drivers do if they see those flashing lights? HPD says the guidance is simple. If the school zone lights are flashing, the posted school zone speed limit applies. That's because students may still be on campus for after-school activities like sports, clubs, or other extracurricular events. Officials say that it's more about than just following the rules. It's about protecting the students who share the road with you, whether you know they're there or not.
Slow down, pay attention. These kids are important, whether they're important to you or their parents or their grandparents. These children are important, no matter how old, no matter how young. It doesn't matter if they're at high school or if they're in pre-K. Their lives are important, so them getting an education is important.
In 2022, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration reported that speeding was the primary cause of 60% of school zone accidents. In Alabama alone, ALDOT has tracked nearly 2,000 crashes in school zones in 2024. So when it comes to school zones, it's always better to be safe than sorry. We can verify that, yes, school zone speed limits do apply, even if they're flashing on a weekend or outside normal school hours. HPD says to help keep students safe, slow down and leave early to avoid being in a rush. And remember to put the phone down.
Every day, thousands of Alabama students ride school buses to and from class. But when a school bus stops, one wrong decision from a driver could put a child in danger. Alabama law requires drivers to stop in most cases, but there's still confusion about what to do if you're approaching a bus from the opposite side of traffic. So let's verify.
A school bus stopping to pick up or drop off children should be a clear signal for drivers to stop. But nationwide, illegal school bus passes happen millions of times every year. A recent estimate by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration found that more than 43 million drivers pass stop school buses illegally during one school year. But sometimes it's not because people are recklessly driving, and maybe because people just don't know the rules. Most know that you should stop when trailing from behind, but the rules get a little hazy when coming from the other direction. So, what should you do when approaching a school bus from the opposite side of traffic? Let's verify. Our sources are the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the Madison County School System, and the Alabama Code. Here's what we found. Under Alabama law, drivers must come to a complete stop when approaching a stopped school bus with its warning signals activated, and in most cases, this applies to both directions. But there is one exception. Take a look at this chart. On the left, you can see a 4-lane divided highway with a physical barrier separating traffic. If you are behind or traveling alongside the bus, you must stop. But if you are traveling in the opposite direction and that barrier separates you from the bus, you do not have to stop. However, drivers should still use caution because children can be unpredictable and may dart into the road. The remaining images show a 4-lane road and 2-lane road without a physical barrier. In this case, both directions of traffic must stop when the school bus has its warning lights activated. This is where the rules may get unclear for some drivers. Although the image shows 2- and 4-lane roads, this rule still applies to even larger roads like 6-lane roads without barriers, and getting it wrong can cost you. A first offense for illegally passing a stopped school bus can result in a fine between $150 and $300. Repeat offenses can lead to higher fines, license suspensions, community service, and even a felony. So we can verify that the only time opposing traffic gets a pass is when there's an actual physical barrier separating the lanes on a road of 4 lanes or more. Other than that, if you see no barriers, come to a complete stop and wait until the school bus turns off its lights.
Taylor's Law has made headlines across Alabama over the last few weeks, reminding students that their behavior in the classroom can affect their eligibility for a driver's license. But is this law actually new? Let's verify.
This may have been your first time hearing about Taylor's Law. Several reports have claimed the law is just now taking effect, raising alarm bells for parents and students across the state. But is Taylor's Law new? We verify. Our sources are the Code of Alabama and the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. Here's what we found. Taylor's Law, also known as Section 32-6-7.4 of the Alabama Code, allows public and private secondary schools in Alabama to assign disciplinary points for certain actions, including in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, placement in an alternative school, and expulsion. Students who accumulate enough points may have their eligibility delayed for a learner's permit, driver license, or other operator credential. Under the law, schools are responsible for maintaining student disciplinary records, assigning points when required, and reporting the information through the established process. Once ALEA's Driver License Division receives that information, the agency determines whether a student meets licensing requirements under state law. But this law isn't new. It was passed by the Alabama legislature in 2009 through Act 2009-713. However, the Alabama House of Representatives passed House Bill 33 during this year's legislative session, which proposed changing the age requirement under Taylor's Law. The amendment would have reduced the requirement for a person who is 18 applying for a driver's license to be in high school or an equivalent down to a person who is 16 and satisfies one of the following requirements. They must be in or have graduated high school or is making satisfactory progress toward a general educational development certificate from a state-approved institution, or participating in a job training program approved by the state superintendent, or gainfully and substantially employed working full-time to support a household, or be a parent with custody or be pregnant, or have a signed declaration that the parents of the person depends on them as their sole source of transportation. But House Bill 33 failed to pass the Alabama Senate, so it did not become law that would take effect August 1st. So we can verify that no, Taylor's Law is not new.
Some of us are no strangers to luck. Maybe at least one time in your life you found some money on the ground and thought, hey, I'm definitely going to get some snacks with this. But following a recent case that sent a child to the ER after picking up a dollar contaminated with meth, some people are asking, can you overdose by just picking up drug-laced money off the ground? Let's verify.
An 11-year-old boy in South Alabama ended up in the emergency room after picking up a folded dollar bill at a local Walmart. Police say the dollar contained a white substance that later tested positive for meth. Luckily, the child and the family were safe, but that raises the question, can you overdose by picking up drug-laced money off the ground? We verify. Our sources are the American College of Medical Toxicology and the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Here's what we found. While unlikely, finding drug-contaminated cash is possible, and it's not the first time something like this has happened across the country. In 2022, authorities in Tennessee reported 2 cases involving folded dollar bills on a gas station floor that tested positive for meth and fentanyl. That same year, a toddler on the Alabama coast found a folded bill stuffed with fentanyl powder in a parking lot. But experts say you're not at risk for overdosing just from touching the bill. An overdose happens when enough of a drug enters the body and reaches the bloodstream. In cases involving fentanyl, the American College of Medical Toxicology says the risk of a serious reaction from casual skin contact is extremely low, and there are no credible medical reports of someone overdosing from brief incidental skin contact, and that same principle applies when looking at drug exposure in general. Experts say the bigger concern is accidentally moving residue from your hands to your face. For example, someone could touch the bill, then rub their eyes, rub their nose, or eat without washing their hands first. That's why health officials recommend washing your hands thoroughly with soap and water after touching an unknown substance. They also say you shouldn't use hand sanitizer because it's not designed to remove unknown chemical contaminants the same way soap and water does, and it can actually increase absorption of the drug. So we can verify that no, you generally can't overdose simply by picking up drug-laced money off the ground. The risk comes from where your hands go after touching it.
Dogs and cats are filling up animal shelters faster than they can find homes, leaving some shelters at critical capacity. It's a pattern that seems to repeat every summer, year after year. So is there a real reason behind it, or is it just coincidence? We verify.
Animal shelters across North Alabama are packed this summer. In fact, Huntsville Animal Services has declared a crowding crisis more than once this season alone. So why are animal shelters overcrowded in the summer? Let's verify. Our sources are the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals and a peer-reviewed study published in the National Library of Medicine. Here's what we found. It turns out this isn't just a Huntsville thing. Shelters across the country see a huge jump in kittens and puppies between April and June, with May being the worst month. Almost 6 million dogs and cats came into shelters nationwide last year, and experts say there are a few reasons shelters become more crowded during the summer. First, it's the height of puppy and kitten season. According to the ASPCA, more puppies and kittens are born during the warmer months, which means more young animals end up in shelters. Financial issues also play a part. Experts say cost is one of the biggest barriers keeping pet owners from getting their animals spayed or neutered, which can lead to even more births. With the number of kittens and puppies adding up, shelters often find themselves taking in more animals than they can adopt out, leading to the overcrowding that we see every summer. But experts say that's only part of the story. Summer is also the busiest time of year for people to move, and according to a peer-reviewed study published in the National Library of Medicine, housing and moving were among the top reasons people gave for relinquishing their pets to shelters. The study looked at more than 2,800 surrender records over a 6-year period and found that housing or moving accounted for about 18% of cases. When pet owners move, they're sometimes faced with situations where they can no longer keep their animals, so they have no choice but to bring them to the shelter, adding to the number already waiting for homes. So we can verify that summer overcrowding at animal shelters is connected to peak puppy and kitten season, along with an increase in pet surrenders tied to people moving.
For some of us, flashing lights in the rear view mirror can spark a bit of panic. Your first assumption may be you're getting pulled over, but most often that's not actually the case. Those flashing lights are likely just trying to get to the scene of a crash or a fire or even to the hospital. And you're in the way, but what do? Let's verify.
Some people drive with music blaring, others headed to and from work on autopilot, blocking out everything else. And that's when you see them, flashing lights coming up behind you. Sometimes it's as easy as pulling over, but other times it's a scramble to get out of their way without causing even more chaos. What should you do when approached by an emergency vehicle? We verify. Our sources are Owens Crossroads Police and Alabama law. Here's what we found. It's the law in Alabama that drivers must yield the right of way to lighted emergency vehicles. The law says you have to move to the right-hand an edge or curb of the roadway and stop and stay in that position until the emergency vehicle has passed. But what if you can't safely move over right away? The Owens Crossroads Police Department says if there is a car directly to your right, continue to pass that vehicle, then move over when it's safe. And don't forget to use your signal. But what if the emergency vehicle is trying to turn right? OCRPD says you should just slow down and drive along the right edge of the road or stop if the emergency vehicle has not passed by you yet. If an emergency vehicle pulls up behind you at an intersection, guidance is to proceed through the intersection and pull over to the right as soon as possible. Don't slam on your brakes. Don't continue to drive in the left lane. Don't leave the roadway while driving fast. And don't stop in the left shoulder of the road. It's best practice to check your rearview mirror frequently to look for approaching emergency vehicles so you have time to react. If you fail to do so, you may be subject to more than just guilt. Failing to yield is a ticketable offense that can carry a $150 fine and a price of 3 points on your driver's license. Summer is a time for vacations, road trips, and family fun, but for blood centers across the country, it's also one of the most challenging times of the year. So, why are there blood shortages during the summer? We verify. Our sources are the CDC, AmericasBlood.org, and Susan Carter with the American Red Cross. Here's what we found. According to the AmericasBlood.org, blood donations can drop by about 20% during the summer. Susan Carter says that drop comes down to a few different factors. One of the biggest is that people's routines change.
Sadly, it is a trend in the summertime, particularly due to vacations and people being off with their children and they don't think about it.
She also adds that vacation isn't the only thing that comes with the kiddos being out of school. It also means that campuses are closed.
We do see a decline in the summertime also because our students at high schools and colleges do a fabulous job of supporting their local communities by offering blood drives and participating as blood donors.
According to America's Blood Centers, high school and college blood drives account for about 20% of donations during the school year. But once summer break starts, many of those drives disappear. But the need for blood doesn't take a vacation. Hospitals still need blood every day for emergency surgeries, cancer treatments, childbirth complications, and trauma patients. And Carter says your travel plans can put even more pressure on the blood supply.
When the nation is traveling on vacations, we do see an uptick in accidents, traffic accidents, and things across the country.
Research shows that traumatic injuries from car accidents surge this time of year, especially among young people. Safety experts say with school out, more teens are hitting the roads during what they call the 100 deadliest days of summer. According to the CDC, teen drivers are 3 times more likely to be involved in a fatal crash during this time. And when those emergencies happen, hospitals need large amounts of blood immediately. Some trauma patients may require dozens of units of blood, and in more severe cases, as many as 100 units. But keeping up with that demand isn't as simple as stockpiling blood. Every donation has an expiration date. Red blood cells last about 42 days, while platelets expire in just 5 to 7 days. That's why blood centers need a constant flow of donors, not just when supplies run low. Experts say if you've been on the fence about donating, just remember, one blood donation can help save multiple lives. Today was a hot day across the Tennessee Valley with feels like temperatures reaching well into the 100s. On days like this, you might want to get your errands over with as quickly as possible. But sometimes when we move too fast, we become forgetful. So what happens if you forget your prescription medication in the car? Is it still safe to use? We verify. Summers are hot, but extreme heat doesn't put life on hold. Maybe you're spending the day at the splash pad or finally making a run to the store to make that root beer float. The point is, errands still have to get done, but sometimes that means your prescription medication comes along for the ride. We know that leaving pets or kids in a hot car is a no-go, but what about your medication? Are prescription medications safe to use if left in a hot car? Let's verify. Our sources are the CDC and NetworkHealth.com. Here's what we found. Most prescription medications are designed to be stored at controlled room temperature, generally between 68 and 77 degrees. But on a hot summer day, the inside of a parked car can quickly reach 120 to 160 degrees. Experts say those high temperatures can break down the active ingredients in some medications, making them less effective, even if they look completely normal. Some prescription drugs are especially vulnerable. According to the CDC, when you leave your insulin in the car, there's a chance you can render it completely useless. Inhalers are just as dangerous. Experts warn they can malfunction or even burst if left in a hot car. EpiPens, diuretics, nitroglycerin, and certain antibiotics are also on that unsafe list. But there's no easy way to tell whether your medication has lost its potency just by looking at it. That's why pharmacists recommend contacting your pharmacy before taking a prescription that sat in a hot car for an extended period of time. They can tell you whether it's still safe to use or if it should be replaced. To help prevent these problems altogether, experts recommend taking medications with you when you leave your vehicle rather than storing them in a glove box or center console. So we can verify that no, prescription medications are generally not safe to use if left in a hot car because extreme heat can reduce their effectiveness and in some cases make them dangerous.
Yeah, so if you have something you want us to verify, text us at 256-382-2692.